Welcome back, everyone. At this point, what we're going to be talking about is working with layer styles. And there are a number of places that you can access layer styles. As you'll see, we'll access them through the layers window, the little effects icon right here. And there's also a styles window that you can access as well, but we'll get to that in due time. To start with, I want you to choose to create. And as you can see here, I've got just this light brown color. It doesn't really matter. You can go to your swatches. You can choose any color in particular that you would like. And what you'll notice is that once we apply some of these styles, well, these colors are not really going to be all that applicable. But nevertheless, choose a color, whatever color you like. And you'll notice here I'm going to take from the vector drawing tools. Well, let's just take one of these rounded rectangles, and if you remember from the lessons on vector drawing, I'm just choosing to create, as you can see here, a very basic shape layer. So I've got the shape layer. Here's a rounded rectangle. I can hold shift if I want to make a perfect square, or I could just actually make a rounded rectangle. So what you can see here in your layer palette, we've got the shape layer that we created simply by choosing this option here when using the drawing tool. Now, if you're working with everything at default, which is exactly what we have here, then all you've got is a little icon showing you the color. You'll notice there's a little line around it, but if you remember, once we click on the stage and deselect that particular item, again, because I'm using auto select layer, if I click on the stage here, I'm deselecting the item and we don't see that little path around it. So let's just select this item right here, and what we can choose to do at this point is to click on the effects little icon right there, and you'll notice that there are some effects. Now, we're not going to talk about blending options right now, but we will talk about things like Dropshadow. Check it out. If I come in here and I click on Dropshadow, what it now shows me is that I'm going to have the option of applying a layer style. I can choose to make this active or inactive. And you can see just by doing that what happens in the live update on the stage in your canvas right here. Well, you'll notice that we have some drop shadow information. And there's a preview that's going on here. You can uncheck that preview if you wish. However, as you'll see here, we're working with black, which is set to multiply mode. Now, multiply mode is going to help it to create that overlay effect that we see here. Now, if this was in normal mode, wouldn't really show up all that different because it is sort of blurry and it is sort of made opaque, as you can see here. So we can slide this back and forth. I'm going to keep it at multiply though. And as you'll see, if you slide these things, it's a great way to sort of get your head around what exactly is happening, and more importantly, it allows you to fool around with the basic settings, because when you're working with layer styles, you don't want to be too obvious with them. You don't always want your shadows and your angles to be in a certain direction, or have the opacity always set to, the default, which is fine, but, it's okay to fool around with these, and it's okay to mess with them. Notice this, the angle is indicating the light source on this particular image. So, as you can see here, if the light source was coming from the left-hand side, it would be casting a shadow that would fall on the bottom of the right-hand side. Now, if you wish, you can move that around. Check it out. If I move it over to this side, you can see that now the light source is coming from here, casting a shadow there. Just as easy as doing this. If I put it exactly straight up, for example, I can say 90, and you'll see that the drop shadow is reacting as if the light source was coming directly from the top. Now, what about the distance of that particular item? Here, I'm just going to move it over here so you could see it being cast this way. You'll notice the distance indicates, well, how far from the ground is my object? In other words, how far is it casting this shadow? So, as you can see, if I really exaggerate that, that's way far away, or I can bring that even closer, as we see here. Also notice that you have something called spread, which is, doing what you might imagine it would do, and the spread will indicate how far your gradient is created, or in other words, you see sort of like a fuzziness around that area. And here I'll just move it out like that. The spread indicates, as you can see, exactly how much of that you've got going on here. And there are times when you don't want to have any of that. And if you just keep it down at 0, you'll have something close to what the default is. If you increase the size, you can see how that blurriness is really going to be affected here. So even if you have the spread at 0, if you decrease the size to 0 as well, well, that is going to give you a much cleaner edge to your drop shadow. So you see, no matter where you end up creating that drop shadow, this one is instead something that is not as, now notice this, see, if I put the opacity to 100%, you'll notice that, of course, it's not as fuzzy as it was before, and it's giving you a harder edge. So that's a little bit about working with the drop shadow layer style. Let's come back and we'll explore some of the other ones as well.